Hi everyone, welcome back to the Model Railroad Back Shop. I'm your host Roger Kujawa. We're in Ixonia, Wisconsin on my Atlantic and Great Western. The Madison local here is at the tower getting their orders to go back to Madison. Ixonia is also where the ANGW interchanges with the Wisconsin Short Line. The Wisconsin Short Line is a little ragtag outfit with some older GEs and Alcos that runs from one town to this interchange yard to service a couple grain elevators. It's a frac sand plant in the background. It's a newly developed industry for the Wisconsin Short Line. Yes, there are plots still available at the Trackside Cemetery. Get to see the Atlantic Great Western and the Wisconsin Short Line both go by. So if you need one for your loved ones, give them a call. So the purpose of this video was to show you the backdrop. Did you even notice it while you were watching this? There's no limbs, there's no leaves, there's no trunks. This is a technique I came up with just to give the illusion of trees and hills in the background. I didn't want to take your eyes away from the trains, which are the stars of the show. So let me get started here and I'll give you an idea how quick this goes and how easy it is. I'm sure everybody can do it. I was watching some of those Bob Ross videos on TV. I'm not sure if you remember him. Probably most of you have seen him. He's the guy that paints the happy trees. And that's kind of where I got the idea. I watched a couple of his videos. I bought one of his books. And I think I got just enough background detail that your imagination fills in the trees and the hills and the distance without taking your eyes away from the trains. I didn't do anything to the paint. It's right out of the can. I just have a regular about 1.5 inches, maybe 1.25 inches brush, nothing fancy about it. And since I'm in Wisconsin here at Watertown, I just want kind of gently rolling hills. Now kind of get the shape in of some rolling hills. You don't have to worry about getting close to the bottom because it'll get covered by the darker colors. There's a building that'll cover up this end right in here, so I'm not going to even bother painting behind the building. Now, as you get this in like this and the brush is kind of dried out, this is the time to come in and put some stippling like up here to represent trees that are very far away. All you're looking for is the illusion. You don't have to get really detailed. Some of these are actually going to get covered up anyway. So you can see how much it's already kind of starting to look like trees in here. But you want the brush to be somewhat dry as you're doing this stippling effect. Kind of gives you that illusion of distance. We're putting the lightest color in the back. That's the trick I learned from watching Bob on TV. Lightest color in the back, and then we'll come up and put darker colors as we bring this forward. Let me move the camera down and I'll show you some more of this. Don't forget to wear your old clothes, or at least an old shirt. paint goes pretty far. The blue I picked, I went to the store and I just picked out a light blue. Later on, I'll probably airbrush some clouds in, but you don't have to do that. I think just adding the skyline here does wonders. Remember when you're doing the stippling that you want the brush to be fairly dry so you don't get great big blobs. You want it to have that kind of see-through airy look. And there's no right or wrong on this. If you don't like it, just get out some more blue paint and go right over it. But I wouldn't get in too big of a hurry to overpaint it. You can go ahead and just raise this up a little bit if you didn't like that piece. Just make this hill a little higher. The next step when we bring in the other colors will cover up some of this anyway. I usually wait 24 hours between coats. But you can see how quick this goes. Probably in about I didn't time it, but I would say within an hour I'll get this 25 foot done for this first coat. Another item you want to think about when you're doing your backdrop, you don't want it too detailed actually. I think the picture or photo backdrops, they can be so realistic they can actually take away from the looks of the trains, and that's what you want to concentrate on. So this gives you the illusion that there's trees back there, and your imagination surprisingly will fill in a lot of details, and you won't even notice when you're running your train that it's not a real backdrop. And I think concentrating on your train, especially when you're running it and you're blowing the horn for the grade crossings, you're not going to notice that there's not individual leaves on these trees. You won't even tell what kind of trees they are, really. I haven't had any luck getting my wife to help me paint, although she paints china. So I've had to do this myself. But I actually kind of enjoy this. Especially when you start seeing it come together with the second and third coat. That's about as far as I can reach here. I have to go down in that corner. I don't know if you can see it with the... But my bench work widens out here. So I'm going to have to go down to the crawl space to get this next step. The next color is a little bit darker. Remember we talked about the lighter colors in the background, and they get darker as you get close to the beginning. So it's a very similar technique as the other one. We just kind of want to put some landforms in and then stipple. A fairly dry brush. By putting some along the bottom, it kind of dries the brush out. Then you can go ahead and do the stippling. You want to cover up some of the background in places so you're getting a layered effect. This is a little higher than maybe in the back. There's a little hill here. You want just a little bit of paint on the brush. You get too much and you get blobs when you go to do the stippling. This paint goes pretty far when you're only doing a small section like this, so don't go out and buy a couple gallons of each color. You'll never use it up. If you have a couple friends, you can probably split half gallon or so. This is on my lower level. That might be why you're getting a little bit of an echoey noise, because my voice is bouncing off the upper level. You can kind of see a little bit of a 3D look to it already with just the two on here. Hi everyone, we're back. This is the third coat, a little bit darker than the other ones. I don't want to cover up too much of the other two colors. I want to keep that 3D perspective going. So I'm going to be a little bit lower on this and only come up a little bit just to kind of simulate a little bit of a hill. So after I dip the brush in, I usually do a little bit along the bottom to kind of dry it out before I do that stippling effect we talked about before. A lot of times you just want to dip in just a corner of the brush just to get a little paint on there, and then the rest of it stays kind of dry, so you can get that effect of somewhat see-throughness, but you've broken up that hard line across there where you put the paint on. And we're not trying to do individual trees or anything. We're just trying to get a basic scenery shape of stuff that's going on in the background. Now the last color that I put on will be real close to the ground foam that I will use. And the reason for that is it'll give you a little transition where you can hardly tell where the ground foam goes and the backdrop starts. One of the all-time innovators, I think, of model railroading was a guy named John Armstrong from way back. He has done some fantastic track plans. He had a lot of ideas that influenced me about wanting to make my railroad more like a real railroad, where it goes from town to town, switches local industries, interchanges with other railroads. one of his ideas that he talked about was your layout is like a stage, and the trains are the actors. That's what you want to concentrate on. So you don't, listening to that, ideas that he had on that, it got me thinking that you don't really want your backdrop to be artist quality, where somebody is going to come in and go, wow, look at that backdrop. I think his idea was, want him to come in and go, oh, look at the trains and how they're reacting to the industries and stuff like that. And the backdrop would be just the scenery like you'd see in a stage on a play or something. It's a supporting cast. It's something that's important, but you don't want it to stand out. You don't want to be, when Romeo and Juliet are doing their scene, you don't want to be looking at the detailed scenery in the background and thinking about that. You want to be looking at and enjoying the actors, and which would be the trains. I can hear my friends now going, oh, that was pretty deep there, Roger. Getting into your railroad philosophy. But I think he made a great point. Another person that influenced me a lot was a guy named Mcclellan, who had the Virginian and Ohio layout. He had a concept called good enough. And if you can't see it from too far away, there's no reason to put that kind of detail and stuff into it. Other people have called it the 2-foot rule or the 3-foot rule, that when it's that far back, you don't have to put a lot of detail in it, because your mind will fill in the details. You'll actually think it's there. I think that's a lot true with locomotives and cars. When you have a big yard and you're switching cars on there, you're not necessarily going to notice which brake rigging is underneath that car, because frankly you can't see it, and your mind is more concentrated on getting the car into the right track and imagining where the switchmen are so your moves look realistic than you are to worry about it has the correct brake rigging underneath that car. That's one thing that makes the model railroading community great, though. If you enjoy that, you just enjoy building something, and you want to put all that detail on there, you can. But you don't have to. You look at what the locomotives are coming out for now with all that detail parts on them. And I've spent a lot of time adding parts to my engines. And when you take them up to the club or to the Fremo, every time you box them up, you take more chances of knocking stuff off. You almost get to the point where I'd rather have more durable stuff that's you can run and enjoy than have to worry so much about breaking parts off a $200 locomotive. That's about as far as I can reach. I'm going to have to give up on this taping because I need to duck under and get to the other part. That's not pretty for you to see, so I'll be back with part 4 here in a little bit. Well, we're back with the 4th and darkest color. This one I want to make really airy so the other ones show through. I've got a piece of cardboard here, so if the brush seems too wet, I can kind of dry it out. So we're going to make sure that we blend from the ground cover, which is going to be laying on the surface here, up into the backdrop. So this blue that's down here that I got when I painted the sky, that's all going to get covered up. And if there's anything in here I can't get to, then I'm going to stick some ground foam in here to cover all those little spots up. So now that I've got that, I want to make sure this brush is real dry. And then I'm going to put in the trees and bushes that would be kind of in the foreground. But I really want to let a lot of that show through to create that illusion of distance. Just want to break up that line at the bottom and make this real airy. Remember, we're not trying to paint individual trees. We're just trying to get the illusion that there's something out there so you don't see that stark blue and your mind is concentrated on the trains. One thing I think I forgot to mention, you want to use flat paint. You don't want glossy paint. So make sure when you go to the store you get the flat paint. You want to make sure you break up any lines that don't look natural. Straight lines, you don't see a lot of straight lines in nature. Getting close to the end of what I can actually reach from here without ducking under. My duck under is only actually to do scenery, possibly re-rail a car. I built my layout with no duck unders at all. It's all walk around. Basically, I set my goal at 3-foot aisles. There's 2 places where I got down to 30 inches. It's a little bit of a tight squeeze because you can't pass there if you got 2 people running trains and the trains happen to be at that point. But it doesn't happen that often. But, if you're building a layout, I would really avoid a duck under if at all possible, especially as you get older. I've had a couple back issues and a knee issue. Luckily, they've pretty much been fixed. But I couldn't imagine building a layout and then not being able to use it because of that. And if you're a little bit older, it gets harder and harder to do that. And after you've invested all the time and money into a layout and then not be able to use it or have to tear it down because of a duck under, that's going to be hard. hard on staying in the hobby and staying motivated. Well, that's about as far as I can reach. Let me reposition the lights here, and I'll kind of show you what we've accomplished so far. Well, here's the finished product. It's still a little damp in spots, so you'll see some highlights. This is where I started. This is that building I was telling you that I started behind. So it's going to sit in here like this, so you'll never see where I ended. So I did about 25 feet. I'll kind of give you the whole tour. That's the corner down there, and the hole I had to duck up under to get that corner done. And then it goes over to the edge where the turntable is. So I'm pretty pleased with this. I've used this technique quite a bit. Now there's more you can do to it if you wanted to. I haven't seen where it's really needed. Once you put the ground foam and the trains on here, your eye doesn't seem to notice that you can't see individual trees, stuff like that. So I will get some trains out, and I'll show you what it looks like with cars and buildings and trains running, and I think you'll be see that you can do this yourself. In the next two scenes, you can see the backdrop with and without the foreground trees. This is a Madison, Wisconsin to Milwaukee freight. I model from Madison to Milwaukee and from Milwaukee down to the Chicago suburbs. I also have a little stub that represents Green Bay, Wisconsin. Doesn't actually go to Green Bay, but it goes to a staging yard which represents Green Bay. So while you were watching the trains go by, did you notice the backdrop? Or was it in the background like it was supposed to be? You notice there's no individual leaves, no limbs, no stalks, no trunks. And that's what I'm hoping to do, is to concentrate your eyes on the action on the railroad, not on the backdrop. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Check out my other videos. I've got, I think 10 now. I was surprised. I was trying to do one a month, but so far I think I only got 10 in this year. So check out my Atlantic Great Western page on YouTube. I'm on Facebook also. Model Railroad Back Shops on Facebook, and all my videos are up on YouTube. I appreciate it if you check them out. Thanks. Bye.